Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 has been echoing to me lately, honestly, for the past few weeks. And what I mean by echoing to me, it's like the idea of that verse has been showing up in my life in different ways. I feel like I'm blessed to be able to be an observant, also an experiencer. So it's like there's things that I experience for myself in life that has taught me how to maneuver better in life. It has taught me lessons that I needed to learn about, just society, about structuring in society, functioning in society, connections with people, understanding the environment, and understanding myself, right, for self mastery. But my outside understanding of things that are external, things that even with the laws of the universe being in play, it's myself, but it's also in the observation of others and seeing what other people are allowing themselves to go through and how exactly they're allowing themselves to go through that rather than it be the idea of them being a victim. We're not victims. We choose to be victims unless you're an adolescent who, or you're someone who is not able to decide for themselves for whatever reason. You know, those are victims who can't make a choice for themselves for whatever reason it may be, whether they're an adolescent or whether they're an older person who's impaired. Just not able to function in society as what they may call a regular normal person, right? So, but majority of us on this planet, we have the choice on what we allow into our lives versus what we don't. And what I see is a lot of people are allowing their emotions to be churned, their ideas about things to be churned, all because of external things, all because of how they're choosing to relate to things, how they're choosing to translate things, how they're choosing to understand things, right? It's all a choice. Even when people who are aware, I know people who have knowledge, who have the knowledge of understanding, like your awareness and about how you approach things and about how you decide to continue in your reality, how you decide to have fun, how you decide to hold up your standards or your discipline, what you choose to consume, right? Even with that understanding, I see people still have trouble because they still allow, and for a certain point, to a certain extent, it was even me too, until I really learned how reality works, right? And really grasp the understanding. It's not even just grasping the understanding, it's acceptance, right? It's accepting the fact that our choices, the things that we choose to consume, right? The things we choose to do, to interact with, right? The people we choose to interact with, right? How we choose to translate what someone is saying to us, right? Whether or not we choose to assume things or go based off of facts, whether we choose to be good communicators, whether we choose to listen to people rather than just try to talk over them, right? Whether we choose to eat foods that we know is not good for us or choose to eat healthy or whatever, you know what I mean? It's all a choice, is what I'm saying. All of this is just a choice, but I find that people get to a point where they forget or maybe they don't really understand, right? Because for me, even with just getting, things like The Secret and learning about the law of attraction, reading the Kabbalion, you know, even with that, I still had to go through my process of accepting this shit, right? Because it's like, okay, you tell me that this shit is in my hands, is in my control. I organize this shit, but we've been so programmed to think for so long that there's outside forces, there's this God, or there's a devil, there's angels at work and all this shit that we don't, even when you tell us, no, it's your own application, we fail to recognize our own application because we're still giving it in, but we're not recognizing that. We're not consciously aware of that. We're still thinking that, it's something else, right? But the fact is that it's not something else. And for me, I had to keep going, keep learning. So going to things like, honestly, when you study things like epigenetics and things like the placebo effect, you gotta like the idea like placebo effect for example, the idea that we could convince ourselves or be convinced that a medicine is an actual medicine that was designed to heal a certain sickness, even though it's really nothing. It's just a sugar pill or whatever, and or telling us that we have to go through this surgery and we don't even actually go through a whole surgery, right? They give us a mock surgery, but then after being convinced that it was real, instantaneously we're start the healing process begins for us and we start healing, right? And the sickness goes away for a certain period of time as long as the belief stays intact. Because with that, what scientists have discovered, what doctors have discovered, is that yes, the belief has a strong impact on whether or not a person can be healed by a medicine that's not even a real medicine, a mock pill, right, or a mock surgery. But it's only due to that belief system, because once that belief system changed, because let that person be convinced otherwise from a article in the newspaper or some conversations, if they're easily influenced, that the pill actually didn't work or the treatment wasn't really working, nothing really happened, then that convincing alone, that will shift in their mind. The chemicals will react in their body to, oh, damn, we're really still sick. We're not healed. We thought we were, but we're not, right? It's all in the mind. And this has been studied, right? So, and then epigenetics, right? The idea that our environment affects our genes, right? The way our DNA is expressing itself. So epigenetics tells certain genes whether or not to turn themselves on or not, to activate or remain dormant, right? How it's going to express itself, right? And these are the genes that definitely pass on to our children, but we could alter that because it's all about our influence and how we're translating that influence. Because I say in my book, and you've heard this many times, that two people could be in the same city, but view it too differently. Two people could be in the same room and it could be two different energies. They have two different ideas about their space, right? So one person could be living in harmony and another person could be experiencing nothing but chaos in their definition of it, right? So with that being said, like someone could be in a poverty-stricken environment, right? The hood, and so many people who are naturally in this environment become drug dealers, become addicts, become robbers, become gang members or whatever. But an individual could choose to not allow the experiences he's seeing in there, or even once he's having at home, to affect his mental well-being, to affect how he thinks about himself, right? So he could be an individual that sees his environment and gets inspired to want to change his environment, be inspired to be better. You right? So it'd be inspired because he sees so many people getting sick, so he might be inspired to be a doctor. He might want to start studying things, so understand the wellness, wholeness. You know what I mean? And actually, because he's doing that, because he's allowing a different kind of influence in his mind, his or her mind, right? I want to stay gender neutral here, but because they're allowing a certain influence in their mind that is opposite of the influence that everyone else is allowing, then they may not get sick as much. They may not go through the same type of emotional turmoils that other people are going through, same kind of sickness, same kind of headache, same kind of sleep deprivation, right? Because this is what it affects. With epigenetics, is our environment could affect our mood swings, our sleep patterns, um, our mental well-being, the way we get sick, right? The way we express ourselves, the way our bodies begins to continue to express itself, right? Express itself, right? I'm like, okay, well, if this is true, we got epigenetics, right? And we got the placebo effect. And these two alone show the power of consciousness, show the power of how just our mind, our mental well-being. The Bible again says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I want to get into that because that's the topic today: epigenetics, placebo effect. I've been taking notes, y'all, right? Because I talk about the structure of existence, I talk about how we can shift our reality, but I said, let me go ahead and make a map, right? Let me go ahead and take notes of the things that I've been studying, the things that I feel connects to understanding how powerful our mind is, how we could change the influence in our reality, right? How we could organize our shit to be one that we prefer rather than get out of what we don't prefer. Because so many people are just complaining. That's all I see is we complain, 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 as if we cannot change this, right? As if we cannot change our experiences. And I tell people over and over again, what you're going through is what you're allowing. You're allowing, if someone's irritating you, you're allowing them to irritate you because one, You're allowing yourself to be in that person's space to have that have communication with that person. But okay, let's say you just had to have that communication, but and you say they're still annoying you, they're getting to you. You're allowing to translate what they're doing, to transmute what they're doing to affect you. You cannot allow it to affect you. You can allow them to be them. You're saying that the way they're expressing themselves, you don't like how they're expressing themselves is irritating you because you feel like they could express themselves in a whole different way. But who the fuck is you to say that someone should express themselves in a different way than how they're naturally expressing themselves? You feel me? Whether or not it's right or wrong, their person is expressing themselves organically how they feel is necessary to express themselves. But you organically need to make the choice of how you're going to transmute that, how you're going to relate to that. You know what I mean? And too many people get into defense mode. And that's why, because we're in defense mode, we're still thinking that things are out to get us and out to attack us rather than understanding things are responding to our vibration. And this is what it's a fact. It's not woo woo. It's not just mysticism anymore, right? These are things that we all have fucking AI everywhere, right? I'm not condoning it because I understand the effects it has on water, right? But at the same time, we have access to information. Y'all using it for all the other bullshit to make these pictures and stay trendy. You know what I mean? And there's a thing on that too. It's actually a real thing about this monkey see, monkey do concept. It's a real scientific shit, and a lot of people is just it's in it. You know what I mean? They're consumed into this madness. Um, Again, that's a choice. But the idea is that we can get out of the things that we don't prefer, right? There's so many ways that I could just say that anything that you're going through, whether you like it or you don't like it, you're choosing to go through that. This is what you prefer. You chose to be in the environment. You chose to engage with such persons, right? You chose to relate things a certain way, to define things a certain way, to assume things about people or places, you know what I mean, or ideas, rather than do your true research, rather than have your own experience, right? And you can learn things without having to have your own experience. It's like you can learn that if you go underwater and start singing on the water just freely and shit, you could drown. Water will fucking rush into your lungs, right? You don't need to experience that to understand that could kill you. Just like you don't need to experience touching a hot stove to understand this high. You can see somebody else touching the stove, but just use your common sense. So there's things that we could observe without actually having to go through to understand the mechanisms of reality, to understand how things shape out to be, right? To understand the things that we prefer or don't prefer, right? So we can make the choice whether to engage or not engage. But the thing is, people choose to still play Russian roulette. People still choose to they know something is not right. They know something is not healthy for them, and they still choose to interact. They still choose to engage in it just to complain about it afterwards. And that's insane to me. But I see so many people do that. It's so many people who call me to complain about lives or situations that they themselves are choosing to engage in. They themselves are choosing to be affected by. And but when you tell them that, it's like, oh my God, we do that. They don't want to hear that, but that is a fact. Regardless of how you feel about it, this is a fact. And the ideas behind epigenetics and the placebo effect proves these facts. And speaking of the placebo, let's go into that first, because epigenetics is pretty simple. I want to go into the placebo because I want to talk about some experiments that was done. All right. So let's run through it. Like I said, I have these notes written down. All right. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna read through some of these notes. It's the idea of reading. We need to encourage that more. You know what I mean? I know it's like a lost art. A lot of people feel like they don't got the time to read anymore, but then we're reading every day. Every time we get on social media, we're reading people's posts. We're reading all these things that's triggering us and things that's not expanding our consciousness. Why not take some time to understand the life that we're living? You know what I'm saying? This shit is it's a cheat code, bro. It's dead ass a cheat code. Like no bullshit. And your mans, your people, whoever you, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Zoroastrianism, whatever you into, the Kabbalah, whatever you're into, Hinduism, it all teaches the same thing. The same thing, that everything is a reflection of your inner being. Your eternal state matters, right? Circumstances don't matter. State of being matters. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, people, right? And we got Bible verses all over through this shit, and verses, the Bhagavad Gita, right? Chapter 3, verse 30. With the mind focused on the self, free from expectation and selfishness, fight without mental fever, right? So these things are echoed throughout time, throughout religious texts, throughout scientific studies. It's true. It's true. All right, so placebo effect. All right, what is it? Actually, I got a so the Bible verse, because for a lot of these things, I have like a Bible verse to highlight, right, the theme of this, of whatever topic, right, or whatever next section I'm on. It's all the same topic, but sections, right? So, Proverbs chapter 17, verse 22. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. So remember we talked about that. The idea that when someone believes that the medicine worked for them, believes that the surgery actually worked for them, they actually become healed. But as soon as that idea is deterred in any way, distorted in any way, and they're convinced otherwise, then the sickness comes back. So think about what does the medicine does? The medicine, what that does is it put chemicals in our body that can over time destroy the negative cells that's in our body that's causing us to be sick, right? The disease that's within our body can destroy those things or could subdue it as well before a lengthier point of time. That's why they always tell you got to take it consistently, because even that could run out, right? So they tell you to take it consistently, take it consistently. So think about that idea. Just the way they tell you to take medicine 2 times or three times, you know what I mean? However many times a day, the idea is consistency. So it's the same thing with consciousness, with mindfulness. You gotta be consistent with this shit. You can't just say, I believe that I'm healed and I'm healed, and then let that go, right? Let any other thing dilute that, or you know what I mean? Put that in another place where it don't need to be, right? It's all about the choices that we make, right? And we have to be consistent with these choices. We have to be consistent with our beliefs. And that is through consistency, we'll see things expressed in our outside reality and our outside experiences. Consistency is basically the womb for experiences, right? It's what keeps it in and allows it to, it pushes it out as well, right? So it keeps it in, right? It holds it in there as long as it can, right? And then it, boom, lets it out, lets it out, lets it out, as long as the consistency remains. You know what I mean? It's like turning on the faucet of water that's just infinite. It just keeps going to keep coming down, right? But placebo effect is when a person experiences real improvement in their health or well-being simply because they believe they are receiving treatment, even when the treatment has no active medical ingredient. How does it work? The mind expects healing. The brain responds by releasing natural chemicals, dopamine, endorphins, serotonin, etc. These chemicals can reduce pain, improve mood, boost immunity, lower stress, and create real physical changes. The body does not always distinguish between what is real from what is believed to be. All right? Our nervous system, it responds to what is familiar. All right? What they, not even, we could tell us, oh, it's not safe, it's not safe, but we've been familiar with it. We know we've been used to it, right? And parts of ourselves find that familiarity, find some kind of safety net in that familiarity. And that's where you find people who stay in toxic situations or places where you say they should get out of it. Even when they hear that and they can say that, they can confess that, they're used to that shit. That's what they know, right? That's what it's not that easy for them to just escape. That's the same thing with addiction. You know, it's not that easy for people to just jump off of it because their nervous system has been so used to it, whether it's good or bad, right? So these chemicals can reduce pain, improve mood, boost immunity, lower stress, and create real physical changes. We went through that. All right. This is a study that was tested out by doctors. In a study on patients with knee pain from arthritis, some patients received real surgery while others had a sham surgery. The placebo group was put under an anesthesia, cut open, and stitched back up. So nothing really happened. They just put them to sleep, cut them open, probably was playing some music in the background, chilling, having whatever conversation, because they're not doing the real surgery right here. They just whatever, right? So they just cut them open, like, all right, done, get the stitching back up, boom, boom, procedure done, right? Months later, many of the placebo group improved almost as much as those who had real surgery, right? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, real surgery is real surgery, right? But the fact that they improved just as almost as much, and when they're saying that, saying like not everyone showed that amount. But you know, there's people who from that placebo group who showed enormous amount of change, success from the so-called surgery, right? And I believe that accounts to their own personal belief system, their strength of their belief system, right? Because any little ounce of doubt, you know, people might have surgery. Like, I don't know if that really worked. I don't know, but I mean, I had surgery though, so it should have worked. And it had to work. I mean, I did have surgery. I had something done, So you have that part of the consciousness with that confirmation, which is good enough to allow healing to actually get done. But if it was limited in any way, I believe because it's the limitation that's in the subconscious. This showed that belief and expectation alone could trigger powerful healing responses. Exactly. All right. The connection to mind and reality shows how the mind can alter how we experience reality. Right. Our thoughts, beliefs, and expectations influence the body. With this understanding, we get the fact that, okay, it all influences our body, right? When we're not feeling good, when we're not feeling healthy, feeling right, to our best, we don't perform our best. We're not doing the things that we really need to do. We're not showing up how we really need to show up or how we mean to show up. We're not accomplishing tasks, right? We're not sleeping right, right? We're not getting headaches. We're not focused. We having all these ideas in our minds where, the negative beliefs that's keeping us stagnant, keeping us stuck, that, sometimes when you're feeling, your mind is too clouded or something happened that you're taking it really deep and it's hard for you to function on anything else. You know what I mean? And you're sitting there just scrolling on your phone, just scrolling endlessly or just looking up in the sky endlessly, not doing anything, right? Now it's a good time to reflect, right? But a lot of times we allow ourselves to just stay in this pit of sadness and this pit of misery, right? And this woe is me, right? And thinking that something outside has to happen, something has to change, that other person or whatever has to do something different for us to feel better, rather than us choosing to just feel better, rather than us choosing to not allow whatever that thing is or person to affect us how they're affecting us, right? To change the relation that we have with whatever thing that is. All right. Consciousness is not separate from the body as part of the experience of it. All right. Consciousness is part of the experience of the body. The placebo effect reveals that belief itself carries biological power. The mind participates in creating the reality we experience. So this is how it flows: belief, neural signaling, chemical release, bodily response. All right. That's the flow. That's the formula. All right. So we got another study. In the 1970s, researchers discovered placebo pain relief could be blocked using naloxone. I believe that's the naloxone, 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 I guess, right? Remind me of damn Color Purple, right? What did you say? WINDOW, window, or whatever, right? Which blocks opioid receptors, right? So interesting, right? It blocks opioid receptors. So they discovered that placebo pain relief could be blocked. That means that we are naturally releasing opioids in our bodies. We can naturally release that. We don't need to go to the doctors to get these opioids. That's just the instant pill to just rush it, right? But why force things into your body when you can naturally process it, when you can naturally create it, right? When scientists gave people placebo painkillers and naloxone, the placebo stopped working. The brain had released its own opioid chemicals because of belief and expectations. All right, so they gave them fake painkillers, right? They gave them fake painkillers to see if whatever they're going, whatever pain they may have had, could, the placebo. They wanted, tell them, okay, this is real painkillers. The placebo effect's supposed to work. Their belief system supposed to enhance the so-called fake medicine and allow them to, release those chemicals in the body like we explained and allow them to be healed. But because they introduce another medicine that blocks the opioid receptor, that means that when the placebo, when our beliefs is shaped to believe that we're being healed and we are in a happy state, right? When we're in a high vibrational state, right? Our body is releasing these chemicals. Our body is releasing opioid chemicals, right? And this allows us to feel good. It allows us to be positive. It allows our body to be healed, right? So, I mean, that's something I feel like this all goes into the idea that we create this shit. We organize this shit. We decide how our reality is going to be experienced for us and our personal realities, right? And it can influence other people, right? But it's also up to other people to make that choice to be influenced. You know what I mean? So, um, Oh, this is the okay. So I have this in here too, as well, under the placebo effect, and I love it because I said the monkey see, monkey do system, mirror neurons and social influence. So they call them mirror neurons, right? And these are specialized brain cells that activate both when performing an action or when observing someone else doing so. Scientists believe mirror neurons help explain emotional content, emotion. When you're feeling something that when you're seeing some people cry and you start crying, right? So the emotional influence, right? When you're seeing other people happy, you're happy. The energy influence, the energetic influence that we get from a crowd or from like a social media post, right? Or especially when we see someone that has passed who we personally did not know, like a celebrity, and we get emotional. Social learning, expectation effects, therapeutic trust, right? Therapeutic trust is interesting because this means if a patient deeply trusts a doctor or healer, the brain may amplify expectation responses through these systems. That's why when you got like root workers or whatever, they need you to be calm. They're nice to you. They're trying to create some sort of familiarity, some sort of good little bond there, right? So that you guys could, that way that everything, you're not nervous, you're not, take away any negative thoughts, any negative ideas, any limited beliefs that you might have had, and you get closer, you get a little friendship with with your healer, not too much, right? But to allow you at least to feel a little bit comfortable, right? And that's why people say, I go to my doctor, I'll go to this person, because that's who they know, that's who they're familiar with. And because of that, their doctors could be doing things that other doctors are doing, but it's because they have that belief, that connection, that strong, like, what I mean, that positive confirmation within them that this person can heal me, this person is good for me, and amplifies the healing, and they actually can see good results, even better because of that. All right. Then I wanted to. Okay, we talk about that. All right, Donald Hebb, a psychologist considered to be the father of psychobiology, so psychobiology, for unlocking how the brain learns, formulated the what is it, the Hebbian theory, formulated the Hebbian theory, stating that neurons that fire together stay together, proposing that repeated mental patterns strengthen neural connections. If someone repeatedly believes I am unsafe, I will fail, or I am healing, right? Those repeated thought emotional loops strengthen corresponding neural pathways over time, and this changes perception, behavior, emotional regulation, bodily responses. Again, the idea of consistency, right? So that that right there explains better when because people talk about affirmations, they just tell you that. But why does that work? Why does that work? Let me read this again. A psychologist considered to be the father of cognitive psychobiology for unlocking how the brain learns formulated the Hebbian theory, stating that neurons that fire together stay together. Right? That whole idea, family that prays together stay together, that type of shit, right? It strengthens the bond, it strengthens the connection, right? Proposing that repeated mental patterns strengthen neural connections, right? So same things happening in our body. If so, as within, so without, as above, so below. If someone repeatedly believes I am unsafe, I will fail, I am learning, right? I am healing, right? I am successful. Those repeated thought emotional loops strengthen corresponding neural pathways over time, and this changes perception, behavior, emotional regulation, bodily responses, which explains also going back to the placebo effect. How our environment, right? It's not just the idea that our environment is influencing us, yes, but how are we accepting the influence from our environment? Again, it's all about acceptance. It's all about the choices we're choosing to make. And this is what I need people to understand when we talk about the idea of living your preferred reality, right? It's not just mysticism, as we can see. This is scientific fact, right? But the idea is that has been echoed throughout time in religious texts, in mysticism, right? So we are just now, science is just now understanding and discovering things that people were finding out in ancient times. People like Hermes Trismegistus, people like Buddha, people like Jesus, people like Krishna, people like Lao Tzu, who is already speaking about, already teaching people, right? But the way they were saying, see, the people were not back then. They wasn't doing the things we're doing right now, and then the minds of the people back then, outside of the influencer, outside of the influencers, the prophets and all that, they were still babies. They were still learning, right? So as you can see, these people, like Jesus, Yahshua was teaching people about the structure of existence, teaching people how they could be just like him because he already became enlightened. He understood. He went through his training, his teachings, his his studies, right? And he mastered the understanding of how reality really works and how there is no real death and what that really even means, and the abilities we have to heal from our hands, just because of our belief system. You know what I mean? By your faith, let it be upon you. You know what I mean? So these things have been talked about. It's just that we have to understand what they actually mean and really accept them and not just talk about them, not just have fun conversations about them like, yeah, I know, but we really have to put this into practice if we really want to see changes, right? We could talk about, and I keep mentioning the Bible, and how it relates to this understanding what they were, when I say that they were talking about this stuff back in the day, when they wrote this stuff, what I actually mean, what verses am I getting, what verses am I looking at where I could relate to this idea that we are structuring this from our minds, and our minds have this ability that we're not giving it credit for. We're not giving it the ability to express itself in this full expression because of our lack of awareness of it and our lack of acceptance of it, right? So in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 3, it says, by faith we understand that the world, universe, was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of what is visible. We understand that? So created by the word of God. So the word and God itself is consciousness, right? God put thought. So the word came from thought, which is the consciousness of God. God itself being an expression of consciousness, expressed that word, and through that word, through the vibration of that word, created what we see, right? What is seen was not made out of what is visible, because we truly cannot literally see matter. We can't see energy fields and stuff like that, right? Not with these eyes. We cannot see it. But we can understand it, we can feel it, we can relate to it, we can express it, we can express ourselves with it because we are connected with it, right? Second Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. We fix our eyes on not what is seen, right? So they're not allowing the things that they could see to influence them, the things that is visible to them to really influence them. They're aware of them, they can observe them. But when they fix their eyes, when they fix their gaze, in some translations, how it says, how it's written, it's their focus, right? What they meditate on, right? What they allow to control their conscious thoughts. It's the understanding of how reality actually works. It's the understanding of how their mind works. It's understanding how they themselves need to uphold themselves, right? Regardless of what's going on outside of themselves. That's what I take from these things, right? All right, so we do epigenetics. We got epigenetics. So let's run through that again. All right. The influence and connection we have with our environment shapes the way our genes are shaped, right? This is the study of how we identify with our environment and respond to it, influence the way genes are expressed without changing the DNA code itself. Epigenetics is what tells certain genes to activate, remain dormant, strengthen, weaken. All right, some scientific facts that we have on it is stress changes the body, right? We know this. Trauma affects gene expression. We talked about that. Environment influences biology. And let's go back to trauma affects gene expression, right? Because it's about what happens in the things we do when we are traumatized, right? The way we self destruct, the way we just eat anything, the way we just start doing things that we know isn't right for us, all because of how we choosing to respond. Because for some reason, sometimes we think we're attacking, we think we're hurting another individual by changing our own actions, and whether or not we do, that's also dependent on the other individual. But we're hurting ourselves more than anything, right? We're keeping ourselves low, we're keeping ourselves unhealthy, we're keeping ourselves sick, right? We're keeping ourselves deprived, and we're keeping ourselves stagnant, right? When we allow ourselves to respond negatively to situations which we call traumatic, right? Just eating whatever, excessive drinking, you know, toxic expressions, ruining relationships, burning bridges, you know, and these are all the things that happen because of how people are choosing to respond. Because, oh, I'm hurt. Oh, because I can't believe they did that to me. I can't believe, I can't believe, I can't believe. And that's the problem right there. You can't believe. You need to start believing that people are going to do whatever they need to do. But you also need to believe that you need to do what you need to do. And that's to keep yourself uphold yourself, keep yourself firm, right? To remember that you, you, nobody else causes your emotions. You choose the state of emotion that you jump into whenever something happens, whether it's something that makes you laugh, happy, sad, cry, miserable, emotional, whatever. It's you choosing these states because you choose, okay, this is what I know how to relate to this. This is what this is. Of course I'm supposed to laugh to this. I'm supposed to cry to this. I'm supposed to, because how else? This is what I see my mama do, my uncle do, my father do, and everybody else do. I need to do, and that's that monkey see monkey do shit. What we think because what we've seen being done out there, that it must be the way. But it's the wrong way. It's the copped out way. It's the self destruction way. It's the self sacrifice way. No, right? But because, and I'm saying no because I mean, this is what you're complaining about. This is what you don't like. This is what you're saying you don't prefer. So why continue it? Why continue to allow the things that you say you don't prefer to keep influencing you in your reality, to still be a part of your vibrational vortex? Why? This is all choices that you are making. And with that, when that happens, right, getting back to the idea that trauma affects gene expression. So when this happens, you're altering your genes, right? You're telling which ones to shut down or turn on, right? A lot of them are shutting down. Your immune system is shutting down, right? And you're getting weaker, right? And this is changing your blood cells. This is changing it's changing how you're functioning mentally, right? And this could get passed down, right? Because when you're having a child now, right? When you're putting a seed into a woman, developing, right? All those feelings, all those emotions, and the way your DNA is now expressing itself is being transferred. It's being transferred to that child, right? It's being transferred to that fetus, and then that fetus, that child grows up, right? It starts developing with your negative chemicals, right? With your negative emotions, your negative feelings, right? It's adopting all of that, and the genes that's developing in this child is reading all of that. It's learning all of that. It's learning from you, right? It's copying you, right? So what state of being you are in, however state of being you're in, whatever state of being you're in, actually, is going to transfer to that child, and that child's then going to express that, right? So this is how important this is. Right? This is how important this is. This could be passed down to our children so it doesn't just affect us in the present state. All right? Environment influences biology. Thoughts and emotional states affect hormones and nervous system responses. Habits repeated over time shape the brain and body. All right? We learned that experiences affect mood, immune system, behavior, emotional regulation, perception, and health. All right? And we have neuroplasticity connection. The brain recognizes itself through repetition. Repeated thoughts create stronger neural pathways, automatic behaviors, emotional patterns, identity loops. And what's repeated becomes familiar. What's familiar becomes normal. That's what we just talked about. And I say all of that, right? Remember, the kingdom of God is within you. I want to leave with that right there. Luke 17, chapter 21. Luke chapter 17, verse 21. The kingdom of God is within you. All right. I said all of that. I hope you're able to digest all of that. I'm going to do multiple videos. I'm going to do especially a longer video where I'm going to start, because I actually start on quantum mechanics. And I talk about people like Max Planck, Aaron Schrodinger. I be butchering names sometimes. But I talk about people like them who speak on how consciousness is a part of quantum mechanics, and they're all one and the same, and explain how the expression of the universe is the same as the expression that's within us and within our inner universe, right? So there's going to be a longer journey on that, right? A longer video on that. That's what I got. Honestly, all of this is just different sections. The placebo effect is in one section, and epigenetics in another section, but it's all tied to each other. But I had to go through that because so many people complaining about their state of being, man. Their circumstances, right? They complain about their state of being because they don't understand that they're choosing their state of being. They also complain about their circumstances, not understanding that they're choosing to interact and choosing to accept these circumstances, but they can also choose to repel them as well. It's all choices, man. And that's what I want people to recognize. It's all choices. And a lot of people just making the wrong choice. And you just gotta know that. Somebody gotta tell you that shit. Making the wrong choice. Right? Stop allowing outside shit to affect you so much. For real. Because you choosing it, right? And be mindful of the people you're choosing to interact with, people you're choosing to have faith in. Like, come on now, learn from patterns. Like people, and then you give chances and chances to people who don't deserve it because they even constantly show you who they are, right? They constantly show how they feel about you, what they do, like, and you choosing to continue to interact with that, to continue to be a part of that, even though you're still choosing to complain about it. It's crazy. You gotta pick a side and stay there. And it's so real, man. My man Nas said the world is yours. That was real. Real shit. The world is yours, right? None of some ego way. None of you just trying to control the goddamn world like some people we know, right? But it's about your reality, man. Your inner earth, man. Your experience on this planet. It's yours to decide how it's experienced. It's yours to relate to express it however you want to express it. So you just gotta make a change, like Michael Jackson said. Make a change. But like I said, I'm gonna continue doing more of these. I just wanted to break that down for y'all so y'all can understand. Just get a better look. Have somebody that's relatable that can tell you, man, this shit is all you, and you have more power than you've been taught that you have, and to remind you of the people that study stuff like this, but haven't gotten as deep as I've gotten, but still find themselves, still trapped in the matrix of shit. It's just a reminder, like, yo, understand, like, this shit really works. It's not just mysticism that we're reading, ancient shit that we're reading. This is real things that is present to this day that we can utilize right now. And our there's chemicals in our body that is activated and not activated every single day, every single moment, that affect how we express express ourselves in this reality, express ourselves through emotions, through healing mechanisms, through thought processes, through creative processes, right? Various forms of expressions and relationships. It's all happening within, and it's all how we're choosing to define the things that is outside of us, things that we're interacting with, that we're interacting with, right? And choosing how we're consuming things, and being more conscious and aware of what we're consuming to make sure it's right for us, and it's things that we prefer. There's no point in complaining about the shit that you step yourself into and you choose to have and choose to experience. And even when the losses happen, even when things that, the hiccups happen in life, is happening because you missed out, you're missing something. You're not in tune the right way. You're not in tune on the right frequency that you need to be in. So that had to happen to remind you, to wake you up, to get you right. You know what I mean? So that's when these so-called unfortunate events happen. It's only happening to, like, strengthen us, to remind us, like, yo, you need to get on your shit, or like, yo, you missed this. Like, this was you. It's never nobody else. It's always us. Remember that shit, man. It's always us. It's you individually. All right. And then if you can remember that and accept that, then you be straight. But like I said, I'm gonna do a deeper dive on this shit. I just wanted to do this real quick. Even though this is a long ass video, I'm gonna have to cut this shit up. But yeah, that's where we at. All right. Peace.